Hello.
Alright, for real now, let's make it quick. I'm recording this at like 10 p.m. my time when we release it at 3 a.m. my time, so I'm gonna be a little bit wonky. Anyway, this is the X-Fall Shadow build. It works around X-Fall, seen here, and aims to maximize the value of every explosion it can generate by stacking on a lot of crits and generating a lot of damage over time sources. Funnily enough, this might most accurately be called an X-Fall Bone Storm build, because while Corpse Explosion does exist, while Blight is here to improve its damage, the Bone Storm is our primary way of distributing X-Fall to the average part of the dungeon, or anything that we are exploring, because when you add a certain aspect, you know, this wordy little guy, the aspect of Ultimate Shadow, it gives it darkness skills and gains additional effects. So not only are you getting the Bone Storm effect, which isn't a damage over time effect, by the way, it is just something that deals this much damage to enemies while they are in it, which is why sometimes it will crit. Anyway, I digress. Let's read Ultimate Shadow. Enemies damaged by Bone Storm take 2,515 shadow damage over 2 seconds. That means you can literally drop it on people, or pass by people rather, and they will get a dot. And what do you do with that? You wait for X-Fall to solve the problem behind you. And currently my build, considering my imperfect rolls, can get up to say 75-80% on a great day. And I say on a great day because I have been, you know, combing through my stats, and I don't know why when I remove most of my gear I end up with like 12% crit rather than the 8.5 that is expected at level 100, but I digress. Actually, I don't digress. Get to me if your gear is also acting weird, because I removed X-Fall and put it back on and it gave me like 0.5 extra crit chance, and it does not have crit chance on it. And now add Flicker Step to the mix, which reduces our cooldown for up to 10 seconds depending on your roll and how many things you dash through. And now you have a X-Fall distribution network. You turn on Bone Storm, you dash through people, probably with Metamorphosis. In fact, definitely with Metamorphosis. As you can see, by the way, in the back, I'm just letting the Butcher live for fun. We can destroy him, albeit at, you know, some time loss, because shadow over time effects act really weird against things with barriers. I know they exist, I'm pretty sure they exist even, but sometimes they don't proc as they should, because I've never seen this explode on the Butcher. But anyway, now you have a really fast way of clearing dungeons, and possibly the abattoir of the things, because all you need to do is have a Bone Storm active, have a Jafal in your hands, and then start dashing through things to safely apply them. Now, there are a few variations on this build. We will discuss them further, but mostly they revolve around whether or not you are running Lidless Wall or you're running a neat little new aspect that adds around 50% damage. Either way. Oh, and an extra chance to tack on more lucky hit, as well as crit chance or whatever, you know, stats you might want to get on a source. Or is it Phylactery, or was that Diablo 3? Anyway, you can see that gameplay being expressed in the back right now. I'm just dashing through everything, applying X-Fall. I'm not even looking back. When our crit damage is this high, when our damage over time is this high, which, by the way, this is no slouch at either. It's back in Corpse Explosion and Blight for the extra damage. You don't really have to pay attention to what's behind you, even when I'm clearing nightmare dungeons that require a full clear, and sometimes I just do that for, you know, best practices. I rarely have to backtrack, and when I backtrack, it's usually because of one like spider or something that spawned after everything else died. Now, the dashing part of your gameplay is mostly for clearing, but when single targets are around, that's when I start pulling out the good old Blight to apply extra damage bonuses, as well as Corpse Explosion, and stacking them over and over again. On a great series of stacks, we can end up with 1.2 million damage over time per second, which is nothing to sneeze at. To put that into perspective, Uber Lilith has around 42-45 million HP on her. And I mean, we're not gonna kill her with that because she's gonna destroy me through mechanics. I'm just saying how much damage this brings to the table, and it's not entirely reliant on X-Fall. X-Fall is great burst and, you know, smooths everything out, but here's the deal with X-Fall. It's still a lucky hit, and we can get a lot of lucky hit. I've gotten our lucky hit up to like 70% on Bone Storm and our Corpse Explosion, as well as Blight, but X-Fall is still a lucky hit proc of 50%, so even at 100%, you would end up with it proccing half the time. which is why I went with a more balanced approach. By balanced, I mean having both enormous dot damage as well as enormous crits off X-File, making X-File as, as consistent and as efficient as possible. So now we have a build that has really fast clear speed and very, very fast on a bunch of lucky rolls boss skill speed. So it's a really, really solid build. It is, unfortunately for me, I think my daily driver for Necromancer. If I want to level up a Paragon node really, really fast, I just take a bunch of level 80, level 90 things and just start dashing through them. And considering the amount of armor I have packed into this, I don't even care if the Nightmare Dungeon reduces my armor, because I regularly get 15, 16k armor. And yes, that is way above the cap of 13.3. But, that cap's probably going to get raised eventually once we get higher, at challenges. And it lets me ignore one more bad affix. And there's a lot of bad affixes to be had in this game. Mostly the poison affixes, but even this one can handle it because it can generate barrier off its Bone Storm. Too long didn't watch, although if you're at this point you probably did watch. The point is the build is very fast and very safe, because when it deals a lot of its damage, it doesn't even need to be there. If you have any more clarifications required, just as for the gameplay loop, it is apply, decrepify, and then dash through things with Bone Storm is active. If Bone Storm is not there, do not dash into the fight. Bone Storm is your protection as well as your main damage applicator that doesn't require you to stand in place and possibly get hit with a crossbow. Okay, great. Now let's talk about gear, skills, paragons, and some decisions that I made about them. You already know what this build is all about. You can go on ahead and check out the link in the description below for the build, which also includes gear, skill, paragons, and, vampiric powers. But if you do decide to leave the video at this point, please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more, because it would help me out a lot. Let's start with the gear. The helm and chest should be of no surprise to anyone. It is the shielding storm aspect as well as the aspect of disobedience. By the way, bone storms generated by Lidless wall will also proc shielding storm, so you have a ranged way to generate barrier, although things around those distant bone storms will likely be dead anyway. It's just a nice, neat side effect. As an additional note for those of you who don't know, if your own personal Bone Storm disappears but you have another one generated by Lidless Wall walking around on the map, well, you keep the bonuses of your Bone Storm, which include 20% critical strike chance as well as 15% damage reduction. How about that? That alone will put Lidless Wall on top of many people's lists for the offhand, but I have an argument for an alternative which we will discuss later. Now I'm going to do things a little bit out of order here, because these are two aspects that will be interchangeable depending on the rest of your rolls and your stats. We have Grasping Veins, the aspect, and Blighted, the aspect. Grasping Chains gives you a 20% increased critical strike chance for 20 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils. By the way, the low end for the Sacrilegious Ring is, yes, 6 seconds Corpse Tendrils. Anyway, and increases your bonus critical strike damage to enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils by 40%, while aspect of the Blighted, or the Blighted aspect, can increase your damage by up to 180% after you proc the Shadow Blight key passive. However, after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times, so like 10 times proccing it, which is not very difficult considering how often we proc it. Now, most people will tell you to put the Grasping Veins on your amulet, and on some level they are right, and that level is, can you get to 100% critical strike chance? Because I was raised on XCOM, I made a lot of XCOM videos, and I gotta tell you, if it ain't 100%, it ain't guaranteed. I put the aspect of the Blighted, or the Blighted aspect, on my amulet because it is straight up damage that is quote unquote controllable. I know when it's gonna happen. It's not a matter of chance. If a dot is proccing and it eventually ends up, hitting somebody with Shadow Blight, well, then we're a step closer to getting that extra 180% damage, aren't we? And that's 180% increased damage that applies to everything we do. That includes any of our crits, any X-File procs, everything, especially our damage over time. We're sacrificing a lot of numbers if we put the Grasping Veins on our amulet, if we're not hitting 100%. And it is possible, because the numbers on the sheet are kind of weird right now, but even like some offhand math, and I remember doing the math last time when I made a Bone Storm Lidless wall build. It's still theoretically possible even when you have 2 rings that on paper don't have any crit on them, but my X-File is acting super weird. Anyway, the point is this. If you put the Grasping Veins on your amulet, you get a 30% increased critical strike chance at a perfect roll instead of 20%. An extra 10% is not a lot. Meanwhile, putting the Blighted aspect on your amulet gives you a predictable, controllable 50% damage bump. And that is why I put Grasping Veins on my gloves rather than my amulet. Now, the build still works very well if you switch the 2 around. I am simply informing people of why I chose to do it this way. Okay, back to 3 things that should surprise nobody. We have Tybalt's Will, Flicker's Step, and Ultimate Shadow. Tybalt's Will, we don't, really use the resource generation, although it is nice when I feel like spamming blights at people. It's really the bonus 40% damage that you can't get on pants anywhere else. Now, I will be the first to say that, oh my god, Tybalt's Will, totally optional, especially if you're not pushing high-tier nightmares. And even if you are, you probably still have enough damage to just breeze through them and go with the normal strategy of Bone Storm dash dash dash. If you do decide to do that, I recommend stacking some Corpse Explosion on your pants, as well as a full retinue of defensive stats such as armor and damage reduction. Ultimate Shadow is core to the build because it gives us our damage over time on Bone Storm and allows us to do the dash 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 thing. Flicker Step allows us to do dash 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 and lower the cooldown of our ultimate. We will leave the offhands for last because they will require their own section. So let's go on to the Bling Bling rings, the Sacrilegious ring, as well as the X-File ring. Sacrilegious Soul ring, which sounds like it belongs in a Dark Souls game, automatically casts Corpse Explosion for you every 1 second and Corpse Tendrils for you every 8 seconds. So you're gonna have like a 2-second cooldown of Corpse Explosion damage bonus, crit chance bonus, and that's wow. Oh, ooh, you can even cast it yourself. Like, it just allows for a lot of comfort and is also one of the reasons you can just dash and Bone Storm your way through, because you're gonna be leaving tendrils and corpse explosions behind you. And I guess if you want to run with some skeletal mages, which is a variant for this that has been rattling around in my brain, you can. And of course there's X-File, our local, everybody's loving this ring. Lucky hit, your damage over time effects have a 50% chance to erupt, dealing 41,368, I can't read, damage of the same type to nearby enemies. So if you're dealing shadow damage, which we are, we're just gonna keep dealing more shadow damage, and that proc can crit. Think of it as ice shards, except they go to the gym and are a little flaky, but when they come through for you, man, they will punch somebody's head clean off, leaving you not only with a victory, but with PTSD. Now let's talk about our offhands. You have 2 options here. One is very, very safe and the common solution, and the other one is one that I've become obsessed with, but it has its own benefits as well. There's Lidless Wall and Aspect of the Damned on a focus. For Lidless Wall, you're going to be running with Blood Mist as one of your skills, and really it's just there as an emergency go away button because you're in trouble. Lidless Wall, being a shield, has a number of defensive abilities, such as the recent upgrade in Season 2, it finally gives armor. That's right, shields did not give armor before Season 2, and Jesus, why? Anyway, it also, being a shield, gives you a 20% block chance that cannot be improved by any means near as I can figure, as well as 60% block damage reduction, which is great for that extra survivability. It also gives you a lot of extra life, and most importantly, it has the ability to spawn more Bone Storms, which means more damage over time effects, which means more opportunities to proc X-Fall behind you. Because if you leave a Bone Storm there, it's going to keep reapplying the damage over time, making it linger a little bit longer, giving your Shifal ring a chance to blow up and kill things behind you, making it efficient when you're just running through an area. Added bonus, if you happen to leave it on a particularly difficult enemy, it will continue to give you a barrier, which is pretty slick at keeping you safe. And as we have mentioned previously, a Bone Storm spawn from Lidless Wall continues to apply Bone Storms effects on you, which include the damage reduction and critical strike chance. For the aspect of the dam, which I have fallen in love with because of its thing, you deal 50% increased shadow damage to enemies afflicted by both Decrepify and Iron Maiden. And Iron Maiden is what replaces Blood Mist on our bar, and it's on screen right now, and it's actually pretty good because of Flicker Step, as well as Decrepify's ability to lower our cooldowns whenever we tag anybody, or at least a lucky hit chance to lower cooldowns whenever we tag anybody that is cursed with it. There's hardly any downtime on our Bone Storm anyway. At that point, I thought, hey, Iron Maiden has a node that lets us heal whenever we kill something that is affected with Iron Maiden, so it gives us a bit more heal. Why not just stack on more damage? The thing with the focus is this is the aggressive offhand. We don't get any defensive options, but we do get a bit of healing from Iron Maiden, as well as critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, and lucky hit chance while we have a barrier, making the X-Falls just a little bit more consistent. Oh, and the 50% bonus shadow damage to enemies also applies to Ishifal, as well as our damage over time effects, meaning we hit very, very hard. Personally, and I've been playing a lot of Diablo, so, you know, while I am still quite terrible at the game, I'm not like as bad as I used to be, so I can play very defensively and smart when I want to or have the mind for it. Trade-off is very much worth it for me. Yes, X-File can hit to the stratosphere even without a source, but aside from the potential bigger numbers that the Damned can give us, I was thinking about raising the floor of damage. The ceiling of damage for builds like this is extraordinarily high. I can see this dodging Uber Lilith mechanics all day, every day, especially with rolls that are better than mine, especially when it can hit 100% crit chance, or even like 90. For a lot of people, 90 is enough. And those bursts are great and exciting, but I wanted to raise the floor of damage. I wanted to make it more consistent in a way, and this is one of the ways you can do that. The funny thing is you don't even need to rely on this aspect on smaller mobs or on general mobs. You can just drop the old Decrepify and dash through them with Bone Storm, and it's gonna work perfectly fine. This is mostly for tougher mobs such as elites, or, you know, damage reduction mobs that are hiding behind stuff so you're not sure if you can get them in time, as well as bosses. Those are your two options, which I will discuss further in the skill section. But as always, if you have any questions, just leave it in the comments below and I will try to get back to you. You know, I keep saying that we're gonna keep this short, but we are 17 minutes in and we're only about to discuss the Vampiric Powers. Anyway, here are the Vampiric Powers, and they should not surprise you in the least. First, 3 Vampiric Powers are Anticipation to lower the cooldown and increase the damage of our ultimate skills, Flowing Veins to increase the damage of our damage over time effects on things that are moving or affected by a Vampire Curse, and Sanguine Brace to give us a bit more crit strike when we are fortified. Also, it fortifies us when we kill an enemy. The last two should be of no surprise to anybody. It's Prayer in the Weak and Metamorphosis. Prayer in the Weak applies vulnerable to things with a Vampire Curse and increases damage against them, while Metamorphosis makes us unstoppable on dash and applies Vampiric Curse. These are our sacrifices. By the way, Skeletal Warriors for Reaper, I believe that increases vulnerable damage, but if you want extra crit to focus more on X-Fel, be my guest. Skeletal Mages, I believe, increases damage against vulnerable, and vulnerable is very easy for us to apply, and the Iron Golem sacrifice gives us extra crit damage. Now, I'm gonna send you off to Past Pat, who will be talking about skills and paragons. Okie dokie, let's make this quick. This doesn't matter, we're not using this. Blight is here as a secondary way of generating shadow damage. I mean, Corpse is always going to do a little bit more than Blight, but Blight can be launched without anything else happening in the game. You can use it to start a kill series if for some reason your Bone Storm doesn't work out. As an additional bonus, you should still cast it in bait encounters because Supernatural Blight allows us to deal 15x more damage to people. Also taking 3 ranks if you'd flash forward to Corpses, and of course max ranks in Corpse Explosion, and of course Blighted Corpse Explosion. Give me a second here, I'm gonna check out what this other thing is. It increases damage to slowed, stunned, or vulnerable, and it can stack. Okay, noted, I guess. Okay, 1 point in Grim Harvest just to get to Fueled by Death. We don't really have any essence problems. Spamming Blight, if that is your option, and it certainly is an option when you're maximizing damage against a large single target like a boss. you don't really have problems thanks to Tie Bolt, which we are running just for the mana. Of course, if you went for a more defensive approach, you could have some trouble, but you could always just spam Corpse Explosion because we're going to be making a lot of corpses thanks to Hued Flesh. We take on 3 points in Death's Embrace because we don't want to die. 3 points in Amplify Damage because your opener, even if you're facing a normal pack, is to drop a Decrepify with V. Abhorrent Decrepify upgrade to lower our cooldowns. This is what lets us run around willy-nilly along with Flutter Step? Flicker Step to keep our Bone Storm free and ready to cast. Although if you are running the Lidless Wall variant, I mean, you should still do that, but you're going to have less trouble keeping the bonuses up because as we have previously discussed and demonstrated, the benefits of Bone Storm apply just as long as there is a Bone Storm that came from you somehow on the field, and that counts Lidless Wall spawns. Very difficult for me to say that word. Here's our 3 points into Iron Maiden. These first 2 don't matter. Well, this makes it free, but it gives you essence. This one is... oh my god, this is terrible. But Abhorrent Iron Maiden is okay. Heals you for 7% of your maximum life when an enemy dies by afflicted with Iron Maiden. It can help you fight off damage over time effects. As recently discovered, or as I recently discovered rather, damage over time effects are not deleted by barriers. It's just that the barrier ball does not descend, so it doesn't feel like you're getting eaten away at by dots, but it is certainly being eaten away at. This is a good way to keep you alive. If your barrier is somehow down, you get caught with your pants down. Now, I'm going to take a break here to tell you what to do if you are running without Iron Maiden and full Lidless Wall. You just take these 3 points here and put them into safety here. 2 points, I don't know where you want to put them. You might want to put them into Blight. It does give you a bit of extra damage. I believe the scaling for that is pretty good, from 136 to 144, which is like 8 points of scaling every time you put a point in, which is a lot, but normally I just go here for the extra corpses, especially when we are fighting a boss. Not really having trouble generating damage because most of our damage is still coming from Jeffal, but we can get good numbers off our damage over time. And the extra corpse would help if you find yourself, you know, lucky hit failing you and all that, and just not making enough corpses for you to play with. Sometimes that'll happen. Or you can just put all 3 here till you can lower the cooldown. I personally like going down the line, but I'm going to put this here because I like it there, and I like being a little daring. Blood Mist, it's not unnecessary, it's pretty good. Also, my roll and my ring is terrible, but it is safety. Sometimes you just get caught in a corner or make a bad decision and you're surrounded or in the middle of a pack, or you need to get in close to a suppressor. Blood Mist will get you there. Corpse Tendrils, another weird one because you don't need the vulnerable from corpse Tendrils. You don't need it. You usually dash through packs anyway. You even dash through bosses to apply Vampiric Curse, to apply Around the Week to make them vulnerable. So you can just move this point wherever. I usually like putting it in a Reaper's Pursuit just because I like the extra movement speed. This becomes more important, by the way, Reaper's Pursuit, if you are running no movement on your amulet, and that's perfectly understandable. I just prefer the comfort of it. I may remove it when we're running Abattoir or Azir runs because movement might be important, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, you do need to kill as many things as possible. Probably not the entire thing. It's probably going to work like Greater Rifts, but whatever. I'm not part of the friends and family. Disgusting term, by the way. We are a company. You are a consumer. And so I didn't really get like any early access things into it. I'm not bitter about it. I'm just saying that's why I'm not sure what's actually going to happen. Anyway, the tendrils are here. If you play corpse, tendrils are here because I like the consistency of vulnerable. Sometimes we don't dash into a pack, we dash across a pack, and maybe I want everybody in that pack to die pretty much immediately, and that works out very well for us with the extra vulnerable. Oh yes, full on here. The extra stun duration, I believe, increases stagger. Yeah, it just increases stagger. It does not increase the lucky hit chance of still 15%. Terror is more damage against slowed, stunned, immobilized, frozen, and those two stack. I'm pretty sure those are meant to be separate. Like, it's not slow or chilled. Like, if it is all 5, it is not like 5 times the damage. That would be absolutely absurd, and we'd have different builds. I believe it is the grouping of slowed and chilled and the grouping of stunned, immobilized, and frozen, because it has an or statement on it. Anyway, Gloom is usually my go-to for my amulet because of the massive damage bonus it gives us. This is a 36% damage bonus in total because it stacks up to 3 times. Moving on, of course, we have Dominion, so standalone is a no-brainer, as well as Memento Mori to increase the bonuses by 60%, which is actually significant. Bone Storm full on to get the 20% critical strike bonus. I'm recording this very late at night, and damage reduction by 15%. Didn't that used to be 20? Did that used to be higher? I might be hallucinating. Or Shadow Blight is our key passive so that we can proc our amulet, which will allow us to deal up to 170% bonus damage. And if that seems like a lot, that's because it is. Unfortunately, the extra damage from Shadow Blight itself, while it can crit, is not fantastic. X-Fall is just more consistent. Although, if you do not want to run the Iron Maiden Decrepify 50% Darkness aspect, running the aspect that lets Shadow Blight stack up is not a terrible call at all. Okay, we're going to do a quick discussion on what Paragon nodes and Legendary nodes we have taken, as well as why. We're not going to discuss the distribution here. We're going to look at that in the build in the description below, or rather you can look at that there. It's more convenient for you to do that. Anyway, and because I have no idea why I did this. I think originally I wanted to take Wither, and then I realized, wow, an 18% chance to do double damage over time. That's actually pretty good considering we can get up to like 1.2, 1.8 million on that, and it's almost like a super crit. But since my int is still low, it doesn't seem worth it. And even at like almost 800 int, it's only an 18% chance to do that. That's not worth it. Anyway, let's take a look at the 6 glyphs that it shows. They are Imbiber. This is the weird one, because Imbiber, while the ability is useless, the socket ability, the one that counts how many willpower you purchase within range, is actually not bad. 49% while healthy. You're probably going to stay healthy a lot. And at higher nightmares, especially if you're not running like max armor or over armor like I am, I believe the cap number is 13.3k. You're pretty much going to die anyway when you're not healthy, or you're going to be jamming on that potion just to make sure you're healthy so you can survive another shot. So 49% damage is straight up pretty good. The thing is, not many other things can compare to it. Like, say, where's Territorial? Territorial gives us increased damage against close targets. That's not always going to be the case. And it's just a straight up 10% damage reduction against, again, close enemies, which rarely is the problem, at least the way I play. The problem I face when I'm fighting, what usually kills me is random poison procs. Random damage over time procs when my Bone Storm is somehow out of gas. Or still that big crossbow guy. That guy annoys me. That guy kills me. Especially when I go down in a nightmare dungeon and have to run back to where I am and I missed a crossbow guy. He just, look, I guess you're going for a walk again, you nerd. Anyway, I did go for this because it's weird, I know, but the extra damage is not bad. It's probably additive as well. There's very few things. In fact, I don't think there's anything that says it's like multiplicative on that, except specifically one of the things we are taking, the critical strike damage. That specifically says it's additive because of the wording under essence. But anyway, we also took that because we want as much critical strike damage as possible, and the multiplier for it, 19.8 at level 21. That's max level. For like 49 dex, gives you 194 critical strike damage. That is a lot. Also, I guess you get 22x increased damage to enemies that are not healthy. That can add up to things that are already like a little bit wounded. Great for bossing. It is a multiplier rather than additive. So I'm not sure if we're gonna fix that. Notable other multipliers are the red ring from Barbarians as well as the Grandfather. They multiply. They do not add 200%. They do not add 100% crit strike. The Grandfather, especially, it just multiplies it. So that's great. And I am dreaming of a Grandfather X-File build party next time. For now, let's go back to discussing it because I am going on a lot of tangents. Control is a classic because we are going to be slowing and stunning a lot of things thanks to our Grasping Veins getting cast every 6 seconds or so, at least if you have the best roll. There you go, plus 128% so far. Oh, it's level 21 as well. Plus 128% damage to crowd-controlled enemies is always very much welcome. And of course, 20x against stunned or frozen enemies. That has to be additive, right? That should be additive because I feel like we'd be seeing way bigger numbers otherwise. Essence we've looked at. Scourge. Most of the effects are shadow damage over time, but I did want an extra source of like extra damage, and shadow over time is there for us because X-File is great, and you can get up to 70%, 75%, maybe even 80% crit if you decide to put the grasping veins thing on your amulet, but 70 is fine, by the way. But I also want something more consistent with damage over time in case luck does not go against in case luck goes against me, rather. And we have a lot of luck, and it's still sometimes like, it's not gonna work for you. Anyway, more damage to things that are affected by shadow over time. Darkness, we have discussed darkness. Imbiber, we discussed it. Imbiber. Exhumation might be the one that most people may remove, but that is by far the most efficient way for us to get fortifying this build, and I really wanted that third layer of defense. I mean, it also increases our corpse skull damage, and that, by the way, is where I became confused with the damage multipliers, because this specifically says it's additive, while say this does not, because there's no plus in it, like right under the darkness where like you just deal increased shadow damage, while this one is like, it's this one's definitely additive. Anyway, I'm not gonna max it out until I can test it, but even then I don't really have room to max it out, and it only improves the damage of, well, corpse tendrils, but the damage there isn't really important, and of course our corpse explosion. Oh yeah, more to the point, when you consume a corpse, it fortifies you for 4% of your maximum life and grants you a 4% damage reduction for 4 seconds. I don't know that 4 things like a reference to death or whatever, but I'm still taking it for sheer safety because I want that fortify. Sometimes we just need a little bit extra. I tested other things such as, let's take a quick look at the skill tree, by the way. Necrotic Carapace, it doesn't work with hewed flesh. I tried it. It just doesn't, unless I'm hallucinating and 2% of maximum life just didn't show up on the thing. But I stood in front of a training dummy for a while. Nothing really. So it's like, this is a passive skill. I think it requires you to have either Decompose or the Reapers or something, whatever else. Maybe Blood Mist. Oh yeah, it's also a skill that creates it. So as a side effect of Lucky Hit, I don't think Necrotic Carapace actually works for that. We took Flesh Eater because we're going to consume corpse every now and then and gain 40% increased damage. Fantastic stuff, as well as Scent of Death. Either you get damage reduction or increased damage. Yay, I think that's it. Wow, back to you, Editor Pat. Wow, 2 legendary nodes. I really did consider Wiver. Oh well. And I apologize profusely for being a little bit rambly. As I said, I'm recording this at what is now 11 p.m. at night. I try to keep it as short as possible. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And if you enjoyed the video, why not like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more, because they will help me out a lot. We reached 2,000 subscribers and I'm very happy to see that. Let's keep going, shall we? Anyway. Oh, and I'm on twitch.tv/Patinator TV. I am Patinator and I will see you later.